It's December, and the final setup in my son's bullet journal is going to be an illuminated pomegranate theme. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth, and it's the end of the year, and it's the end of this journal, and we are going to stick this little piece of washi tape underneath here to sort of hold our journal level so that those last few pages aren't leaning towards the desk, and it makes it a little easier for us to control what we are doing. Now, several months ago, Kenny asked me for a pomegranate and candle theme, and as we started planning this, it definitively looked like it was going to read very much like a holiday sort of idea. And so I pushed this idea to December, making sure not to forget about it so that we could definitely get this theme in for him. My color palette for this theme is very much going to be black, gold, and then the reddish purple of a pomegranate. Now I get a little carried away and make a mistake right at the top of this video. Now I did not intend to put this quote in with written text. I actually intended to use the stamps that are up in the top right corner, and so I am going to get out some scrap paper and we are going to fix this really quickly. So here's my box of scraps. I do keep a lot of things in this box. And here I am grabbing a little bitty piece of label paper. Yes, that has a sticky back on it. It's already a small piece, and I'm just going to trim that down and stick it right over top of this gold shell pen and start from square one all over again. Now, if you do not have sticky paper, you can use a clipping from the back of your journal to fix this mistake. You can use part of a notepad. You can even use part of a white Post-it note. Now, I did intend to use gold on this quote page on the left, but I intended to use these stamps from Archer and Olive, these letter stamps, as well as a gold stamp pad that also came from Archer and Olive in a subscription box. This is my first time using these Archer and Olive stamps, and I love them. I like the fact that they're a little cleaner than a sans serif or Times New Roman font that my other stamp set or letter stamp set is. They are a little tight in the box, so I just took some out so that I could maneuver stamps in and out of that box as I needed them. And since we are using light and pomegranates in this theme, the quote that I am putting on this page is "Light is warm, it is bright, it nourishes, it feeds the soul." Now, I did want to keep this color palette to a minimum, and so we drew pomegranates with 6, 7, 8 different types of markers and mediums, from Archer and Olive acrylographs to Tombow dual brush pens to Amazon Basics brush pens, some of my Uhuhu markers, and then I let Kenny choose the shade of pomegranate that he preferred the best, and this is the one that we landed on, and it is an Amazon Basics dual brush pen. It's a little bit closer to a true red with a little less of the purple, but that's the one that he wanted for this setup. If you remember in the beginning, I did mention that Kenny asked for a candles and pomegranate theme, but as I began researching the candles, they were definitely leaning more Christmas, and I was pretty sure that that is not what he wanted, and I began trying to figure out other options that we could use, and I decided that since pomegranates are native to the region of what is now modern day Iran and northern India, and that Kenny is very much drawn to all things that are in Desi culture, that I would use a dia in place of the candles, and then frame everything in doorways that are definitively from both Desi and Arab culture as well. A dia, spelled D-I-Y-A, is an oil lamp made from clay, mud, or brass with a cotton wick dipped in oil or ghee. These lamps are commonly used in Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, and Jain prayers. Clay diyas are symbolically lit during prayers, rituals, ceremonies, and festivals. They are permanent fixtures in homes and temples. The warm, bright glow emitted from a diya is considered auspicious. It represents enlightenment, prosperity, knowledge, and wisdom, as well as the triumph of light over dark, good over evil. With our dia and first set of pomegranates on the page, I do decide to outline everything to make it pop just a little bit more, and that includes outlining every little seed on my pomegranates to make them pop. And of course, I did decide to add a little bit of foliage coming off of the pomegranates. I did not add any color to these. I liked just having the plain black lines for that branch and leaves. And of course, we need a header for December, so I am going back to the letter stamps, and I'm using this stamp pad from Distress Ink, this mini pad. I ordered a pack of these some time ago because I don't stamp often, but I did want to have some options in colors for stamping, and so I went with a pack of mini stamp pads instead of the full-size ones. And then the last touch I put on this page was just a small flame down at the bottom of the quote. Two things that I am noticing in editing is that the gold did not necessarily show up on the page as well on camera. It looks great in person, and that our pomegranates are slightly more saturated in color in person than they are on camera as well due to the lighting. Next up for Kenny's December setup is his calendar spread. Now Kenny does prefer a standard block calendar. So for this month I'm going to situate that calendar on the right and lower third of this spread so that I can do some artwork on the left and in the top left corner. Starting of course with some pomegranates. This time we are going to have hanging pomegranates. Now I don't know if you've noticed, but I drew pomegranates in pretty much the simplest way that I can, which is sort of an ovular shape with the little sprout of the pomegranate at the top. And that is it, my friends. Just a circle and some little sprigs, normally 4 or 5, sticking off from the pomegranate. These dias were a little bit more difficult. Now when I sketched them out, I did use a circle stencil. I chose not to break that stencil out for this setup. I just thought I would freehand it, and that does make some of my dias a little bit wibbly wobbly, but that is okay by me, and it is okay by Kenny, because it did make the setup go a little faster to not have to get those stencils back out again. The next step of course is to outline everything in black, as well as putting in our leaves and branches. For this I did change and go with a finer point of a Pigmamicron. This is a 0.02, and then when I get to the calendar I actually went with a thicker line to make it stand out. For that I used a 1.0 Pigmamicron, and we are going to pop in the calendar grid here because you do not need to see me draw boxes and numbers. I also topped it off with red and gold headers for the days of the week, and then used the stamps again to stamp out December. This next spread is a little bit of a different one for Kenny. He asked me for a notes page specifically so that he can track ideas that he would like for his 2023 journal. He has asked that we probably keep a notes page moving forward. Like me, he also does not like the phrase brain dump, so right now we are going with notes. To balance that on the right, I put in a gift list so that he can track the gifts that he has bought for people for the holidays. Other than that, I just framed this spread with the artwork as well as the stamped headers, and I'm going to let him fill these in however he sees fit. This also seems like a good spot to talk about some elements of design, so you'll notice that I am, 1, using the same color palette throughout this setup to make it cohesive. 2, I am using 3 elements, the lamps, the pomegranates, and the frames to again make it cohesive. And then the other one that we don't talk about that often is that design works better in odd pairs. So instead of having an even number of items on the page, I have an odd number. So for 2 of the dia lamps, I put in 1 pomegranate, and then of course there are the headers. There's 2 of those, which then makes 5. Odd numbers are just one of those things that are more pleasing to the human eye. I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that it works. The other thing that I have done is make sure that these dia lamps are facing inward. Our brains do tend to pick up on the element of things facing outwards into nothingness from the edge of a page or a book, and they wonder what is wrong. So made sure that these faced inward. With dry gold gel pen, we are moving on to Kenny's first set of weeklies. Now, if you have not been here for one of my son's bullet journal setups before, he makes these weeklies very easy on me, as he prefers to keep his dailies in 8x8 squares. He also writes very small, so I'm able to fit a week on each page. So all I have to do is figure out my design and design it around these 8x8 squares in any configuration that I want to put them in. So for this one, we are putting the 8x8 squares on the outside of the spread, and we are putting his framed pomegranate and dia artwork here in the middle. Now earlier we learned about dias, but what do you actually know about pomegranates? The etymology of the name pomegranate derives from 2 medieval Latin words, pomum, which was apple, and granum, which is seeded, possibly stemming from the old French word for the fruit pomegranade. The pomegranate was known in early English as apple of Granada. The fruit of the pomegranate is the size of a large orange, obscurely 6-sided with a smooth leathery skin that ranges from brownish yellow to red. Within, it is divided into several chambers, containing many thin transparent areoles of reddish juicy pulp, each surrounding an angular elongated seed. While the pomegranate is considered indigenous to Iran and neighboring countries, its cultivation long ago encircled the Mediterranean and extended through the Arabian Peninsula, Afghanistan, and India. It was introduced into Spanish America in the late 16th century and into California by Spanish settlers in 1769, where it is now commonly cultivated in the warmer parts of the Pacific coast from the United States to Chile. Though the pomegranate grows in a wide range of climates, good fruit is produced only where high temperatures and dry atmosphere accompany the ripening period. Seeds can readily be grown, but choice varieties are reproduced by cutting and layerings of wood. Speaking of layering, my last step is to add a small highlight with a Tombow N89 at the top of each of these date boxes. You'll have to stick around for the flip through to see how I set up weeks 51 and 52, but for now we are going to jump to week 53, and then of course it was an odd number, we added a playlist on this page as well. Because week 53 is a standalone by itself, I chose to shift the artwork to the left and just do a half of the arch, and on this side I am going to do 3 of the Dias, and I will add some pomegranate artwork to the right side for the playlist. If you've been around for a little bit, you may have noticed I've made some changes to my setups and trying to use fewer tools, and then also keeping a tool in my hand as long as possible. So you see I used this red marker to draw the Dias on the left page and immediately transferred to the right page to draw the pomegranates before changing over and picking up a different utensil. It's something that's very, very small, but it is making a little bit of a difference in the speed at which I do these setups. So now that the red is out of my hand, I've picked up the gold, and I'm trying to get as much of the gold elements on the page as possible. Now, speaking of this gold gel pen, using gel pen does significantly increase the time it takes for me to do a setup when I am filming, because I am waiting for the gold gel pen to dry. And sometimes I can do that and move on to other elements on the page, and sometimes I know I am going to run my hand through the gold, and so I walk off and go do other things around my house while I am waiting for that gold gel pen to dry. So this setup did take me about 3 hours. That includes all of the gel pen drying time, so it is a little bit shorter than some of the others have been, and I am working on finding ways to make them go even quicker but still having these artistic elements. Once the red pomegranate was on the page as well as the gold on the Dias, that's when I picked up the Pigma Microns to finish everything off in black. This is that same 0.02 that I'm using to outline. Again, I used the 1.0 to make these boxes, and then I am using that 0.02 again just to do this stencil work for these teeny tiny play buttons, and that will wrap up his week 53 and playlist spread. Now, Kenny does prefer to have a monthly review or reflection page in this journal. He is also a long form journaler, so he does a lot of his sort of mental purge long form journaling in a different notebook, but he does like having a review page here in his bullet journal that he can put in some bullet points or just some things that he wants to remember month to month. And because he didn't have any other sort of useful spread that he wanted to add to this, Kenny is not a fan of habit trackers. He finds them counterintuitive. He doesn't really use any sort of steps or wellness tracker either. I just decided to go ahead and bookend this setup with a quote on the front end of December and a quote on the back end of December. So here I'm drawing another one of those Dia lamps that will be at the bottom of the quote for the page. And of course, for our headers, we are going to use these stamps. And while the quote on the cover page had gold stamped letters and red cursive writing, here we are going with red stamped letters, and I will use black cursive writing. We do want them to be cohesive, but we don't want them to be matchy-matchy. And just to recap our other cohesive elements here at the end, we have the pomegranates, we have the Dia, and we have the framed Indian or Arab doorway. And of course, I have got 3 major elements on the page for an odd number, 2 of the pomegranates and 1 Dia. And then on his review page, I do like to use some of the same elements month to month, and some of those are single columns and a combination of double columns, and then some variation on what did I learn this month, what am I proud of, what were my ups, and what were my downs. After taking the step to outline everything in black just to make it pop, especially these individual pomegranate seeds, I do turn to the Tombow N89 again just to delineate some of the spaces on the review, highlighting every other line on the what did I learn section and the what am I proud of section, and then turning the ups and downs actually into a ruled line situation. And that final quote for December reads, "Life is change, growth is optional, choose wisely." And with that, we're ready to flip back to the beginning and look through this December setup with its Illuminated Pomegranates theme. I'm happy to report that Kenny absolutely adored the change from pomegranates and candles to pomegranates in the dia. If you have made it this far, please leave me a dia emoji down in the description box below. Yes, it does exist, and again, that is spelled D-I-Y-A. And let me know what your favorite holiday tradition is, no matter what time of the year that holiday tradition takes place. As promised, here are weeks 51 and 52 set up like the previous weeks with just a little bit different artwork in that arch there in the center. If you liked this video or found any part of it helpful, please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. It really is the best way that you can help this channel. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We would love to have you as parts of the Dots and Beyond family. And as we close this journal, I bet you forgot about this washi tape I tucked under here to keep it steady. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.